Welcome back to Brit's Book Corner. Today's video is going to be my April wrap-up. The month of April, I had a couple of goals. I had 3 writing goals, which were to finish Project Kiss, finish my Wattpad story, as well as plan out another book. And then I also had a goal of reading at the same time as all of that to keep myself reading and not just focusing on the writing. So I'm going to jump in and tell you guys how everything went. So let's start with the first writing goal and the biggest writing goal, and that was to finish Project Kiss. Project Kiss was the biggest goal because it was the manuscript I was working on since late January, early February, and I desperately wanted to finish this book this month in April. And I really wanted to just use Cant as a way to get that done. And in the end, I did it in the first 2 weeks. And that was absolutely crazy to me to finish a book or half a book in a 2-week period of time and hit all the points that I needed to. And you know, it may not have been perfect, and no first draft is ever perfect, but it was finished, and I was so excited for that because I fully intend to publish Project Kiss, and I fully intend to do that. I really do. So let's talk Wattpad now. I wanted to finish my Wattpad fan story, and I called it The King's Daughter, and I had no idea where I was with that. No idea in the writing process, no idea how close I was to the end, nothing. I had no idea. The reason I had no idea was because I didn't know, I didn't plan. I was pantsing my way through it. There was no plot, no nothing. And it was fairly difficult for me to pants that novel while plotting another novel and working from a plot for another novel. And it was really hard for me because I ended up wanting to pants my way through my novel and it just didn't work. But pantsing my way through, you know, The King's Daughter, I finished it within the first 2 weeks, and it was so shocking, so unnerving that I finished that as well in my first 2 weeks. And I mean, with not having known where the ending was going to be, how long I was going to have, it freaked me out a little bit. I'm not going to lie. And so I got through it. I plugged through it, and it was great. So now I've started publishing the chapters onto Wattpad. I will link my Wattpad down below so you guys can find this book. There are 6 at the time I'm filming this updated and uploaded. I am posting 2 chapters twice a week. So on Mondays and Fridays, I'm posting 2 chapters each. Moving on to the plotting goal. And this is going to be a bit of a talk through because a lot of stuff happened with this, and I feel like I need to explain it all to you. So my original goal for plotting was to just plot a completely different book. Something that had nothing to do with Project Kiss. None of the characters, nothing to do with Project Kiss, because I thought that by the time I finished Project Kiss, I was going to be ready to write something else. And I started plotting and started getting ideas and started doing everything that I needed to do, and I did it in a couple of days. And I've never been a plotter before, and so having plotted this book in a couple of days, it kind of freaked me out a little bit. I was like, what? I mean, you know, I did everything. I had everything ready to write that book. I still do have everything ready to write that book. I just haven't even started writing it yet. And planning that book using Save the Cat and, you know, doing all the Excel spreadsheets like I did for Project Kiss, I was ready to write that book, but I didn't start it, and I still haven't started it yet. Just knowing that I finished plotting that book was a success enough because that was my main goal for the plotting purposes, was to just plot the book so that I had something plotted, so when I did want to write something, I could. The goal for April was just to read as often as I could with everything. So I wanted to read as often as I could to decompress myself. My original plan was to read at night right before bed so that I could, you know, clear my head of all the writing stuff so I could get a good night's sleep. In the end, it didn't work out like that. But I did have a good reading month, and I read 15 books in the entire month of April. The first book I read during the month of April is Roping the Cowboy by Kennedy Fox. This book was one I actually got for free in like an email or something. I don't remember exactly which author email I got, but I got it as an email and I got it free. And I read it and I loved it. I really love me some cowboy romances, and this one hit the bill. I love everything about cowboy romances, everything, how they make me feel when I read them, and this book just hit everything on the nail. So I really recommend you read Roping the Cowboy by Kennedy Fox. The book of April I read was Misadventures of a Virgin and by Meredith Wild. This book was amazing. It was the first Meredith Wild book I've ever read, and I love the Misadventure series, well, the ones I've read anyway, and this one just had it all. It had scheming, you know, this girl was like super in love with this guy, everything about this book was amazing. I found myself laughing, I found myself crying. I could not put this book down until I finished it. So that's the second book. So the next book is Inevitable by Kristen Granada. Kristen Granada is one of those authors that I just stumbled upon recently. I've read 2 of her rom-coms, and this book is not a rom-com. I knew going in that it was not going to be a rom-com, but oh my god, the heat factor in this book, everything was just so good. So you guys should definitely read Inevitable. Next book is Made for Love by Marie Force. I have read this book so many times, and I absolutely enjoy this book every single time. I love how, you know, just how this guy who comes from a rich family steps up to help take care of this woman and her child because he did injure her, and how he wants to right every wrong, and how he wants to make the people in their town, in their little island town, view her completely differently than what she has been because of something his brother did. I just absolutely love this book. This book, if you want a lighthearted book with a little bit of laugh out loud moments and a crazy sexy guy, you guys will love this book. The book is Bad Liar by Lauren Rowe. And I've read books by Lauren Rowe before, and this book kind of had me iffy. Now, I loved the rest of this series, and I'll be talking about them in the next couple of clips. But this book, I don't know what it was about this book, and why I felt iffy. I mean, part of me, like when I went into this and I read the description, part of me was thinking like it'd be somewhere along the lines of 50 Shades, maybe the Crossfire series. And some of it did come across as that, but some of it didn't. And I don't really know how to explain why I was so on the fence about it. I mean, I liked the book, I read the entire book, and I loved it, but I just felt iffy about it, you know? I felt iffy about it, and I mean, I'm glad I read it because it introduced me to this series, and I'm sure the more I read this series, the more I'll love it. Is the book 2 of that series that I just showed you, which is the Reed River series, and this is Beautiful Liar. I loved this series. This series was good. This book was really good. This book is what got me actually really looking forward to reading book 3. Even though it still gave me like 50 Shades kind of vibes, I feel like I don't know. You know, like I love it. I can't really describe what I love about it, but I love it. The book in that series is Beloved Liar, and this is the last book of the series, and I loved it. I loved reading it and just seeing how their relationship grew. I loved everything. I loved reading this and getting questions answered that I had throughout both of the other books, and I love that it just kind of, you know, steered me away from that 50 Shades vibe that I had in the first 2 and just kind of created its own thing, and that's what I absolutely loved about this book. So I really suggest that you read every single one of these books. The next book I have for you is Hate Mates by Mikey Miller. Hate Mates is one, as you guys know, I love me some college romances, and this one was one of them. I absolutely loved this book. I loved that it was, you know, mistaken identity, that this college had an influx of female you know, students, and that they ended up accidentally giving a female a guy's dorm, putting her in a dorm with a guy, and she was kind of stuck there, and they hated each other, and then they didn't hate each other, and then they hated each other. I absolutely loved it. I loved everything about it. I devoured this book, and so I highly suggest you read Hate Mates. The book I have for you is The Wright Brother by K.A. Lind. This book is super angst-filled, and I loved it. I loved that You know, it was so angsty and just all of that. I also loved that it was a ex-boyfriend's brother romance. And I mean, I like that kind of thing. Like, I like seeing, like, how is the girl gonna do this? How is the girl gonna handle that? Like, I just love it all. And this book had it all. It hit the nail on the head. It was so good. So many things happened. There was so much suspense built up. So much what is happening. I loved it, and I really, really recommend you guys read this book. This next book is Rhett by E.L. Todd. I have never in my life read a book like this at all, ever. And so for the first one, I absolutely loved it. I've never read books, you know, about escorts or anything like that, just because it's not my cup of tea. But I had Rhett recommended to me, and I decided to read it. And it was about a male escort. Only, you know, like, the details are all explained in the book, but I absolutely loved this book. I loved that he found himself falling in love with this girl. He broke all the rules in the contract for her. He was willing to break rules. He was willing to change who he was. She actually accepted him for who he was, which is even better. I absolutely 100% loved this book. For being the first book I've ever read of its kind, I absolutely enjoy it, and I can't wait to purchase the other ones just so that I can read them and see if they're exactly the same. The next book is Fake It Till You Break It by Megan Brandy. This book is another high school set book, and I'm not big on high school set romance books. I just never have been, but ever since I read Dear Ava, I've been super, like, interested in reading them, and this book was one of them. You know, fake romance to help a girl get what she wants, only to realize, like, they fell for each other, things like that. So much happens in this book that I can't even begin to explain without giving anything away. This book was just so good. I was on the edge of my seat all the time. I was crying, I was laughing, I was wanting to scream at people. I absolutely 100% loved this book. Even though it's not a typical romance book that I would read, this is one that I will always and forever read. Always. The book I have for you is The Other Brother by Megan Quinn. Now, this book, when I bought it, I was super excited, and then it sat on my shelf because the more I thought about it, the more I read the back of the book, the more I thought about what could happen in this book, the more I turned myself off of the book. And then I challenged myself this past week or so to read more books that I'm not necessarily sure I like them or not, and this was one of them. And I was afraid of what I was going to see in this book because I don't like books with cheating. I don't like books with, you know, anything like that. Like, I just don't like books like that. And I was afraid that this is what this book was going to have, and it didn't. It really didn't. It was like, you know, former lovers type thing, and I loved this book. There was so much stuff that I wanted to see in it. There were so many things that I waited to read. I was so on edge. I was like, what's going to happen now? When's this going to happen? Or is this even going to happen? This book kept me on my toes so much. And, you know, I love Megan Quinn, and this book was just another hit out of the ballpark for me. If you've been watching for a while, you know that I also love romantic suspense books. And I read quite a few of them recently. The first one that I read was The Search by Nora Roberts. And this book I bought previously, tried to read it, couldn't get into it, gave it away, and somehow ended up buying it again. And then this time I read it and I fell in love. I mean, I was so drawn to it because, you know, it's a former kidnap victim, and, you know, just all these different things. You know, she trains dogs for a living, and then she's got this really surly, sexy guy who wants nothing to do with her, who says she's not his type, and then lots of things happen and all those things change. And I just loved this book. I loved wondering what was going to happen, who was doing certain things. You know, was she going to do this? Was he going to do that? Just, I was so in love with this book that I absolutely just could not wait to read more of it. And so this is one of those books I absolutely love. What I have for you is Whiskey Beach by Nora Roberts. This book, I do have to say, I struggled to read this book. Not because I didn't like it, but and because I really did like it. I love this book. But it took me a while to get into it because unlike any of the other romantic suspense books I've read by Nora, where you get a glimpse into the crime that, or something that happened leading up to the rest of the events in the book, you get a little look into that, and then this you don't. It just kind of like starts in with descriptions and things, and you hear that somebody is being accused of this, and then, you know, somebody was hurt by this, and then it just drags on and on. But I still loved this book. I loved, you know, that there were so many different things that were going on, but it also, for me, because I did love it, but it also kind of took away from that suspense thing, because there was who murdered so-and-so, who pushed this person down the stairs, who's looking for treasure, who's this person, what does this person have to do with it, what's happening, who killed this person, who's this? You know, there were so many different side suspenses that kind of just drug this book on. But I'm not bashing this book. I still love this book 100%. It just took me a while to get into it and actually really love the book. And once I did get into it, I absolutely loved it. I really loved everything about it. So I highly think that if you really want to read this book, do so, because it's good. You just may have to take a while to get into it. The last book I have to show you is The Witness by Nora Roberts, another romantic suspense book. And this book is one that I bought a while back, kind of like Megan Quinn. I bought it a while back, and it's been sitting on my shelf because I wasn't sure I was going to like it. And in the end, I absolutely loved it. When I challenged myself to read this book, I loved it. I loved that I got the look at the crime that I needed to kind of like put me into the story. I loved trying to think ahead of the things in this book and knowing that I was wrong every single time. I loved that about this book. I absolutely loved it all. I can't pinpoint one thing that I didn't like about this book. I absolutely loved this book. I loved that the characters were so against stereotype. That instead of the male character being surly and unresponsive to, you know, romance, anything, that it was the female that was like that. And I loved that the roles were switched in that sense. And I loved that this heroine was so strong and had done for herself everything that she needed to, and that coming from the upbringing that she had, she pushed herself forward. I loved all of this in this book, and I will forever and always recommend this book when somebody says, hey, what's a good romance suspense novel? I will name this in one of my top 5. I will totally name it, and I highly recommend you guys read it because this book is well worth the read. It for this April wrap-up video. I am in complete shock with you guys. I did not think I was going to get all 3 of my projects and then some done this month. I did not think I was going to have 15 books read this month. I didn't think any of that. I very, very much surpassed everything that I thought I was going to have in this month. But I've also surpassed the goal that I thought I would be at and where I would be at for the month of, you know, for the year. I've read 56 books for this entire year, when my original goal at the very beginning of the year was to read 50. Now my goal is 75, and we'll see if I can get close to that or if I'm going to bump up my goal again. The link to my Wattpad and my Instagram down below so you can follow me in real time for when I publish chapters for The King's Daughter, as well as when I read books and give my honest reviews on them. I hope you guys like and subscribe this video because I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to leave comments down below, ask questions, give me book recommendations, or anything like that, and I definitely will see you guys in the next one. Bye.